So got quite a bit of people trying to join Debbie. So
Yeah.
this is the most we've ever had on our township talk. So obviously there's people
Hot
out there.
topic.
Very hot
Yeah.
topic. So patience with us, please, as we try to let everybody get in here so we get started and they don't miss out.
Well, you're all getting settled. I'm just going to go ahead and talk to you for a minute. My name's Debbie Driscoll. I'm the Executive Director for the ITA and a trustee in Delaware Township. And welcome, everybody. Good to have you here this morning. And before Drew introduces our guest, just want to remind everybody of our upcoming educational conference and trade show, September 21 to 24 at the Embassy Suites in Noblesville. Um, you know, Thinking about this particular township talk and where all this stems from was action taken by our Indiana General Assembly. And I know some people have called, they're frustrated, concerned, and of course, we all have questions. Um, but when you think about things that happen in that Capitol building, we are there, ITA, we are there to monitor and to educate lawmakers and try to protect and enhance township government. And so if you are unsure whether or not you are coming to conference, I just want you to know, especially the trustees and township board members that are on this call, that we are going to spend a good amount of time talking about how we're going to weather this storm. And it is a storm. It is fire. And
You
we
click
want to
on that
spend
when you
some
get
time
it.
talking about the ITA's position and how we're going to
Not
uh,
that, that one.
That's her, and that's Debbie Driscoll, and it's our audio's on. I don't know
Debbie, I'm
what's
gonna have to
going
mute
on.
yeah,
everybody again and it'll
yeah,
kick
I
you off.
know.
So
I
one
hear you.
second.
Uh-huh.
I've got this.
Okay, so if you want to participate in the strategy for weathering the storm, primarily with the Indiana General Assembly, encourage you to be there, especially on Monday of the conference. We will be having a convention meeting for all of our members, meaning the trustees and board members in attendance will be delegates, and we're going to dig down into the strategy, and it's ITA 2.0 is what we will be introducing to you, along with our concept that hopefully will get us through this next session. So, in addition to that, full day on Tuesday of workshops. Monday afternoon, by the way, after the convention meeting, we will be having another general session on the subject of ethics. And the ITA's position on this subject is
They
that we
turned me off a
believe
minute ago.
every
What did that?
single
Okay,
uh, township
because
employee,
they
township
put you
trustee
on mute, but you should be
should
able to hear it.
be,
Pardon me?
They probably put you on mute.
I'm getting that feedback there. Um, Everyone
And that's
should go
you.
through ethics training.
A host is
And this
what?
is
I don't know
something
what
we
it
hope
says.
to be able to hold out to the General Assembly, that we had hundreds of participants in ethics training this conference. So those are kind of the highlights. There's a lot more. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Drew to introduce our guest.
Okay, sending.
Trying to get it to stop sharing.
Yeah, I can do. I don't.
Can you do it?
I thought I could, but I can't.
Here it
Okay.
is. There we go.
So obviously we have a very packed house today. Obviously, if you could turn off
Well,
your
they may have to
microphone,
unmute.
when you guys do that, it jumps
You
over
want
the
the girls to call
screen.
up there and ask them what's going.
Hold on just a second.
We don't need that. Don't need that.
If you have the red or the X through your microphone in the left corner, that means you're muted. It shouldn't affect your volume of hearing us. It just means we won't hear you. It'll help with our, when we're going through the presentation so that we don't get somebody to jump in front of us. Last month we had a basic township talk, just talking about some ITA updates. We got a lot of questions about CIP. I know a lot of you have called in or emailed or talked to other trustees about the CIP. Everybody that's doing this is working through it as we go through our budget workshops and our budget season. So we're trying to get information as fast as we can. Obviously, in June 23rd, we had a finance training hosted by Coonrod and Coonrod and Company. Sorry. And we talked about the CIP. We had the DLG up there, but we didn't have things like the memos and presentations from the DLGF. So we were still kind of before a lot of this information had dropped to us. And we wanted to make sure that we could get you guys some basic information as things that we've learned since our June 23rd meeting and try to get it out there so that we can have the recording of this version and that our members can use it. I had some questions of could people join this if they're not members? This really is a benefit for our members of ITA. If they're on this call and if you're on this call today and you're not a member, it's more of a reason. This is a perk for our ITA members. It's a free access. We don't mind that we get new people or non-members on this call, but it is a benefit for our members. Not exclusively, but we make these things for them. We try to listen to what they've been asking for. If there's topics that they bring up, then we kind of go from there and then we pivot. But the CIP, obviously, we're all in it. I'm trying to learn it. I'm the associate director of the Indiana Township Association, part-time. Full-time, I am the Center Township trustee in Howard County. So I'm going through it just like you guys are, trying to figure out the best way to navigate my budget, with them, the impeding Senate Bill 1 impacts in future years, as well as figuring out a CIP and what my township wants to designate towards our CIP in future years. So Abigail, I was about to call her Abigail. Abbie Parker from Coonrod and Company is here to join us. They help out ITA and a lot of other townships across the state with financial matters and have a lot of experience with it. So she's going to be here to kind of talk through some questions and some common questions that people have. And I'll be here to just help her and to give kind of a trustee's perspective or in a perspective from ITA. So Abbie.
Hello. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to your most
'Cause they don't wanna hear
fun
what we're
budget
saying.
season there are.
Right.
I don't know. I'm gonna step back because I don't.
Can you guys mute yourselves, please? Just make sure there's a red line through your microphone button.
It's Shawswick. Hey, y'all at Shawswick. We keep trying to mute you.
They think that they're having trouble hearing, and I think they are hitting the audio, but the audio is only for your microphone. So it's got to be somewhere in the computer settings. Here, let me see if I can share my entire screen. Just real quick. Sorry, Abbie.
Nope, you're good. Gotta love technology.
So this over here, if anybody can see where it's showing the green where it sees me talking, this is only for your microphone audio. It's not what you're going to hear out of your computer, out of your headphones. If you unclick it, I'm going to hear everything. If you're having conversations or if the fan is blowing behind you, I'm going to hear that as well. If you can't hear, you can always call in. There's a number. Trying to think where it's at from inside the meeting. I can't find it right now, but there is a place that you can hear it over the phone. But you would want to adjust your volume on your actual computer if you can't hear it, because that's going to only be the only way to control what you can and can't hear from the presentation. So if you make sure your microphone thing down there at the bottom left corner where my cursor is mute. If you have a question, put it in the chat. Am I
Yes,
muted?
please.
Okay, I didn't.
Well, you went on and off.
Yeah. If you have a question, put it in the chat. I'm gonna let her run this kind of how she wants. I'll jump in. I'll even mute mine so that I'm not overlapping her with background noise. We'll try to get to them. Abbie will kind of go, and then I'll look through it and kind of let Abbie know if we have a lot of questions, which I'm sure you guys do.
Well, good morning, everybody. Yes, please go ahead and put your questions if you have any in the chat. I've got it open and I'll do my best to watch it and multitask. I don't have a presentation or anything prepared. This was just going to be a time for us just to
They'll
talk.
just mute it again.
Yeah, we're gonna
You did
keep
that a
mute
minute
you.
ago.
Okay. I'll go over a couple common questions and things that we've had pop up in the last couple weeks. The DLGF has released their version of the template. There's been some issues with it, so Drew, can I share my screen? Try to share. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Someone just put yes, please, in the chat if you can see this. Thank you. So pretty note section, just I don't know what it means. It's just got a bunch of Indiana code references that don't really make a lot of sense. Your main unrestricted. So any place you see this pretty teal color, that's where the DLGF wants you to enter information into. Now, if you download this from their system, this is a protected workbook, and so it won't actually let you put anything in. You need to go up here to where it says view. Oh, I lied. Review. And where it says protect sheet, it'll usually say, switch so you can actually see it. See how it says unprotect? If you click unprotect, then you can make edits. So that's the thing they were having the issue with. So you have to hit review, and then unprotect. You want to put your county name, your township name, and when you plan to adopt it. Just as an FYI, I believe Board of Accounts has said that it does need to be advertised. Waiting on clarification, but according to Jonathan and Taylor at Board of Accounts, we do have to advertise and notice. We'll get to that towards the end. You have your unrestricted summary, which will flow through everything. Your rainy day fund, which you'll enter in your December 31st, 2026 cash balance. Yes, it is an estimate. If you have any of these things, they need to be filled in. The orange is a, yes, you can do it when you adopt the budget. The orange is a flow through formula from other tabs. Your general fund is the same thing here. And this was just a plug to figure out, to show you how it works. So you put in your estimated cash balance. This will pull your capital improvement items from the CIP expense tab. And then it'll make your adjusted balance. And then this is the 30% transfer. These are unrestricted funds if you have any. I'm going to say this very loud. We've gotten confirmation from both the DLGF and State Board of Accounts. A park and recreation or recreation fund is restricted by statute. So that is not subject to the 30% transfer. Okay, your CIP expense tab. This is separate from your transfer stuff. You have to list capital improvement ideas for all of your funds. including fire and cume fire if you have it, and park and rec or recreation funds. If you have a fund, we don't know what needs to be advertised yet. We're working on that one still. You put your estimated year of expense. It's got a pretty little drop down menu. Select your fund, the type of capital improvement, a brief description, and an estimated project cost. So let's just say, I'll show you how this works. If we do rainy, see, this is the thing you get. So you have to unprotect. And then if we say rainy day, I can't see it. I'm going to pick on a county here, don't. So now that I put a county in, it puts Township Fire and EMS and Cume Fire because that particular township has those funds. So if I put a $200,000 proposed expense here under general fund in 2027, if I go back to my unrestricted general, see how it puts that 200,000 here, and it reduces my estimated ending cash balance, and then gives you the 30% transfer. I have no idea if the formulas have been changed. I've just figured out a workaround. My biggest issue is how to unprotect each sheet. I've been telling everybody this is not a static one-time document. You will need to revise this document, not only for the fact that you have to re-adopt it every year by September 30th. Big bold letters, everybody. September 30th, you have to have it adopted. You're not going to be held to this as far as I know. So if prices change, which we all expect them to change every year, go in and update it. If you decide, if you've planned on a cemetery restoration in 2027, but in 2026, your roof started leaking and you had to do an emergency repair on it, and you're like, we don't have the cash available, you can push it out to 2028 then. Because we all know life happens, stuff goes wrong, we can plan with the best of them, but there's no way they can hold you to this. What type of things qualify for a capital improvement plan? Well, here's just their basic drop down. Acquisition of land. So if you want to buy land for a park, a building, community center, a fire station, site improvements. If you want to repave your parking lot or add in a parking lot or a space for picnic tables for your firefighters. Infrastructure improvements, that's more road, bridges, culverts, stuff like that. Constructions of buildings or structures. You want to build a building or a storage facility. Yes, Amy, that is a very good question, because State Board of Accounts said that local income taxes have to go to the general fund. You can pay for fire items through your general fund, and I believe also your rainy day fund. But just also remember, you have to have fire stuff in here to show that you are compliant. So the next option is rehabilitation, renovation, or enlargement of buildings or structures, any type of remodel work that you're doing on a current building or structure or a storage shed. I think the main one everybody's going to have is acquisition or improvement of machinery, equipment, furnishings, or facilities. So if you're buying any equipment, machinery, stuff like that, or if you're improving it, it goes there. If you are doing cemetery restoration, my recommendation would be site improvements. Does the CIP have to be presented to the county council? I have asked DLGF, they won't come out and actually say no to me, but they've given me enough information for me personally to tell you no. It is like your budgets. The county council has the option to request that you provide your budget to them for review and discussion during a public hearing for the county council. It is not required. They do not have to approve your budget or your capital improvement plan.
And Abby, can I add to that? Because we've gotten that question
Yes.
several
Yep.
times. A lot of it has to do with, like, a lot of the problems with this CIP, it stems because they just plugged in place an old language, the old CIP into the new CIP. So the county council, people have asked that question. We've had people try to go to county council, and I know that said something about August 1st, which is typically when the county council meets about the lit rates for the incoming year. I've asked the question, Abby's asked the question. If you take it to the county council, it's not going to hurt, but it also says in there if they're reviewing your budget. Some counties, they don't do the non-binding review. If you have to do a binding review because you have a firefighter on your board or there's a conflict, then yes, you could take your CIP to them as well, because it would mirror your budget, I guess, or have some impacts on your budget. There was something else I wanted to talk about that people were asking, but we got to that. So the county council one is, I would say you could send it to them, but they're going to look at you and say, why are you sending it to us? Trying to figure when their meeting is and hide and get on their agenda is going to be very hard if they don't really know. They don't know that they're supposed to hear this, and we don't feel that you should have to present it to them. So the DLGF has sent out recommendations. You could talk to your area rep on what they think for the best cause of action, and at worst case, you just cover, CYA, send it to the county council. But to go sit at a meeting with 11 townships or 20 townships that you have in your county and try to present your CIP, they're not going to want to deal with that. So,
well, and sorry,
go ahead, Debbie.
go ahead. I was just going to interject that we heard back, we meaning at my township, we heard back from DLGF that they will not take county council review of these plans into consideration during budget review.
Correct. I've gotten confirmation from that from Anna and Ryan at the DLGF also.
All right, may I add one thing? Because of the statute that, like you said, Drew, they plugged in the plan. There's a code that states that was established in 2019 that we have to go before the county council and submit. It refers you to the code that says to their first August meeting. My counsel told me I heard nothing different from DLGF affirmative. My attorney stated that because of the code, I needed to follow the procedure, which we did. We went before the county, explained to them what was going on. They felt that, yes, the code indicated it should go to them. However, they weren't prepared either, and they understand there's a lot of newness and confusion to this. With that being said, I did contact my representative and spoke to him about getting this code updated. And he said that he is willing to work with the ITA on this to make sure that the codes are reading properly so that moving forward next year, there's no confusion on whether it has to go to county or not. And so he said he's happy to work with the ITA on this, as well as he did refer that ITA should also speak with Senator Niemeyer, who is obviously township friendly. So anyway, I had to follow it by the book, and but hopefully then you will all be able to work with like I said, Representative Slager and Niemeyer to get this updated. So thank you.
And that's one of those things about this bill it's very confusing, conflicting, because even for my own township, I read it as from the DLGF presentation that said a plan shall be considered by the county fiscal body in reviewing the township budget under Indiana code. my county doesn't review, we don't do the non-binding review. And I've asked, was I missing something? Because I know in 2016, so I reached out to my area rep. They said at worst, send it to the county. She said, but like Debbie said, it's not going to be effective of whether or not your CIP gets, you know, approved by the DLGF. So it's one of those things. If you want to go to the county council meeting, that I think is going to be under your discretion. I don't think everybody's going to be on the same page on that. And
No.
in some counties, they still do go or still turn their budgets into the county. In the county I'm in Howard, our townships, we don't typically turn our budgets in. I've asked my area rep if we were in compliance for that. She said, yeah, some counties choose not to hear them in their county council meetings.
I want to rest assured, make sure everybody is on the same page. You may have to, depending on your county, you may choose to. Ultimately, I have in writing from the DLGF, who is your budget person, failing to submit an adopted plan to the county before the first meeting of the county fiscal body in August does not equate to non-compliance. So whether you do or you do not, as long as your board adopts your public or your capital improvement plan at a public hearing by signing a resolution, that is the most important. That has to happen by September 30th, regardless. So please don't panic and think if you've missed the first August meeting of your county council that you're going to be not getting your property tax levy money next year. That is not accurate. I put it in the chat, so you have that. That is directly copied and pasted from what both Brian and Anna have said, and that comes from the DLGF attorneys.
And Abbie, one thing that I just remember what I was going to talk about earlier
yeah.
was like you were talking about the estimates on the funds for the ending cash balances for 2026. If you've done your budget workshop, you should be able to use those numbers from your Form 4B to implement. So if you're in your general fund, like that's why it's kind of the timing of it's not great, but it's also you can use information from other sources like your budget process. So if you go to your general fund from your Form 4B, you should have a December 31st, 2026 ending balance. And you would plug that in to start your CIP. So for me, I want to kind of know what I've been through my budget workshop with my area rep. I'm going to use those figures to build out what is going to be the ending cash balance of 2026 from my gateway forms.
If you don't have that, feel free to email me or call me. But the basic formula you could use is your December 31st, 2024 cash balance, your revenues expected and received for the year, your 2025 approved budget, less that, and then the same formula for 2026. You add in your expected revenues for the year and you deduct your budget. That should get you a rough estimate of what your December 31st, 2026 cash would be, which is essentially what Drew said before 4B on DLGF's gateway site. Sample resolution. Yes. So here is a very brief example. We have created our own, which is a little bit more detailed than this. I'm working with Drew and Debbie to get this available for all ITA members. We have a draft of it. If you want a copy, please let me know. We can get that to you. Also, related but unrelated, we have a draft resolution also for the creation of the Road and Infrastructure Fund, which is mandated by Indiana Code now. Where do we submit the adopted CIP? It's the same place that you upload your signed Form 4 after you've had your adoption meeting. There's the flat file upload area. You can do it as a miscellaneous form or other form, and then just make sure the name says capital improvement plan. This year only, you are allowed to email it to your DLGF budget rep. but it will not be allowed to be emailed going forward past this year. So they are encouraging everybody to do it through the upload section in Gateway.
Do you want me to share them, Abby? I can
Yes,
take
please,
the
because I
screen
only
for a
have
second.
access to other people's. Do I have to stop sharing?
Yeah, I'm gonna log in first and then I'll take the
Oops.
screen.
Okay.
So under your budget section, right? And then
Yes.
you would go in here to submit signed form for and other documents. And then there's actual drop down in
Oh,
the type. So capital improvement plan, you just take all your signed documents, your plan and your that last page, if you choose to use their sample adoption form, you could put that. If you have a different one, put it in there with the details of your CIP. Obviously put, Center Township, CIP 25, upload it, you're done with it as far as that part.
okay. How far does the CIP have to go? Minimum 3 years. We recommend 5 years. And that's just honestly because you all have one more year left in your term. And then that gives the next trustee to start their term and do that. When does the transfer of funds to the 1461 road fund occur? I have no idea.
I think there's a lot of confusion on that. Me and Debbie were both on a call today with the SBOA just because there's a lot of different departments that have different authority on what we should and shouldn't do. They were the ones that talked about we have to advertise in the newspaper. They said there's a lot of questions they're getting that they can't answer, but they did say there is some confusion on when the transfer occurs, if it's this year, if it's next year. And Abby, you can attest to your own opinion. When I look at their CIP and the figures they use, it appears to sound like the transfer would happen January 1, 2027. That's what it seems
Yes.
like because they're taking 2026 information, determine how much because potentially your tax money could go into the CIP or into the roads calculation if you don't designate it in the CIP. So the other tabs that talks about expenses, you can project your revenue past 26, even though that's going to be even harder than you may have some estimates for 2026 if you've done your workshop or you're in the process of doing your budget. But to me, that's where there's never been a deadline or a timeline or a date that the transfer occurs. So that's something that will have to be clarified. The CIP is September 30th. That doesn't mean money is transferring at that point. That just means it's going to give the calculation for how much money can be transferred, and we've yet to be told by the DLGF or by the statute itself when the transfers are actually going to go, or when you'll have to transfer the money from one fund to the other.
Correct. I have no idea. Contact your attorney if you can, see if they know, but I'm guessing they're going to be in the same boat that the rest of us are in. The Road and Infrastructure Fund, I do not believe that resolution needs to be submitted anywhere. It just needs to be held in your records. Drew, do you know if the Board of Accounts has come up with a fund number for that yet?
I don't think they have, but they kind of hinted that it would probably be 1461. So
They're so creative.
not yet. So I think they're all trying to work it on the fly. I mean, I know it's been thrown on us as trustees and townships, but they're trying to figure out something they didn't ask for and it got dumped on them in the middle of the summer, which they're typically working on your budgets. That we can ask as many questions as we want. And sometimes they're informative, sometimes they're very vague, and we're trying to figure it out on our own. So we're asking people like Coonrod and Company to help us kind of guide our members, but they haven't released a fund. So I don't think there's no reason that before September 30th, you're doing any type of transfer. The way the CIP template is built, it's taking figures from the end of next, 2026 which leads me back to believing that that's when they think the transfer will happen, either in 26 or at the very beginning of 2027.
So to be on the safe side, we're just encouraging people, when you either do your budget or your CIP adoption, go ahead and have your board sign the resolution creating the fund. Keep that signed document for your records, save it somewhere, but since there's no fund number, there's no place really to put it in the budget, let's just get it signed so it's technically created in the eyes of the statute, but we don't have a fund number or anything to put into Tom's Web yet, official from Board of Accounts or DLGF. MOUs for city, town, or county. I read the statute.
Can I jump in on, because we've asked Jeff that question, if he could help draft ITA a sample MOU, but he says it's too hard because there's too many variable factors that might be inside the MOU. So we could put county this, and this and make it very vague, but you're not going to want to have a vague MOU with your city if it's a specific project. So
no,
we can try to build something that you can add in a lot of language, but each individual township is going to have their own custom built MOU with the city or the county or the town.
Yes, we have a basic one already ready, and I've given Jeff a copy of it to look over, but it does require a lot of customization. Reading the statute further and talking it over internally here, an MOU is not required unless you have a transfer. So if you are willing to, able to, and are going to transfer funds, then you need to enter into a resolution or have your board enter into a resolution to enter into an MOU and then have them sign the MOU. So you'll have to speak with a city, town, or county in your boundaries to figure out which person on their side will sign and enter into the MOU with you.
There is a roads fund on Tom's Web.
Seriously? I did see somebody put that.
Yeah, and I just turned mine.
Michelle, you were awesome. It is there?
Obviously,
It's
you
50.
don't have. Yeah, it's 0050. But honestly, everybody, I would pump the brakes on transferring anything right now because we're not being told to transfer money right now. Even though it's going to be still in our accounting system, we're going to really want a State Board of Accounts opinion on when that transfer needs to be executed to be in compliance. But they're not telling us it needs to be done by September. The September 30th deadline is only for the CIP.
Yes.
The CIP does not trigger you. It tells you how much could be eligible to be transferred. It does not tell you, go ahead and execute this transfer from one fund to the next. And I know there's people in here asking for a copy of this. Let me and Debbie figure out what exactly we want to send out, or Abbie can put her email in there if you want to interact with Coonrod, individually, because it's going to be hard for us to go back through here and copy emails and then send out information that I don't have. So if we do get something compiled from Coonrod and from Jeff Bellamy, we will send it out to all the members. If you have more questions or you want some more information individually, please reach out I know Tyler's in here as well answering questions, so I appreciate that. They can help you with a lot of that stuff. And that way you can get it to you. I don't want something to be like, oh, I didn't get this. It's just hard for me to go through a video and copy and paste all these email comments, I guess.
I think Tyler's acting as my secretary today.
He's doing great.
Yes. How do we publish or advertise the CIP? We are working on that.
So, and I think at best, we talked to Jonathan and Tanner this morning in a call, and they're saying it because of the old statute and some things, obviously, like the county council that Kathy had brought up. There are some languages that are kind of odd because we don't do a lot of advertising, or the advertising has gotten less. Like there's no template like an additional appropriation. At best, I think you have to put a public notice that you're about your CIP. I don't think anybody's going to have to put their whole CIP plan, that DLGF form, in the newspaper. I think you're going to have to put, hey, notice a public hearing on, Center Township CIP on August 14th at 10 a.m. And then you have to obviously have the 10-day requirement. It has to be before 10 days before the meeting. Let me work on it and Abbie work on it, and we could probably get somebody a sample because the SBOA said they don't have a template for it. So it could be just as simple as you making the notice that you're having a public hearing on the CIP. Doesn't have to have dollar figures, just has to have a notice, date and time, and where.
Yes, like Drew said, we're gonna work on that, hopefully get you an answer soon. I think the statute was not perfectly written, so there's a lot of the stuff that's coming up last minute that nobody's aware of or nobody thought of beforehand. I think those were all the big questions. I'm going to say one more thing before I open it up to actual questions. September 30th, please. If you do not have it done by September 30th, you will not get property tax levy money next year.
And also, just to go back to the worksheet that Abbie was showing, if you can pull that up again, Abbie.
Yep.
If and just some things that I learned when I was trying to play with it before I got some actual figures. If you try to put 2026 on your CIP and the CIP expense portion and you designate it, say you want to do building repairs or a building addition, if you put 2026 as the year of expense, since the deadline is December 31st, 2026, it's not going to come off your off your total. Now, if you go to 27 and beyond, that starts taking, so that orange box there, if you put all 2026, it won't pull those numbers. So I would assume if you're doing anything that you want to take off, don't want it to be subject to that 30%, is to put it in your budget for next year. Because they're already calculating in that the ending balances by using your budget from 2026. If you put it in the CIP, it's not recognizing it as an actual expense that's protected. So I would look, if you want to do some capital improvements or some expenses to kind of get that balance down in those funds, put it in your 2026 budget right now while you're working it. If you want to do some large CIP projects, if you're saving money for a fire truck or for a fire station, at least when I did it, 2026. So go look for that 50,000. Take off everything except that one. It doesn't show up. So if you having trouble, like, because that's the trouble I was having when we first did it. I was like, I'm going to do a walking path in our park for X amount of dollars in 2026. I wanted to put that on my CIP. But I was going to take it out of the rainy day fund or the general fund, and it didn't show up here because of the 2026. It's not triggering to count it in that calculation they made from the DLGF. So if you have expenses, even though they're not in CIP, but you want to protect that balance, if you put it in your budget, that's coming off of that total where you get this estimated cash balance. You may not spend it, you may not spend as much, but it does go into factor of how much is available for that 30%. So I would say, just as a suggestive advice, you could use your budget, but also use a CIP for things you're not really 100% sure of, because boards have to be comfortable if they're going to approve a budget that high. You do have the ability to spend it once you get, past your budget season or your budget adoption. That if you try to put it in there for 2026, you might as well just put it in your budget. 2027 and beyond, fine, it'll start coming off your calculation. I wouldn't say it's a mistake. I just think because of where their ending balance this December 31st, 2026, I think it's taken all figures after that and not assumes that you have any expenses for the incoming year in your budget. So you could state that you were doing that in 2026, but it is not going to come off of. I can't 100% say that it's a mistake, because I just think that's what it's going based off of. It's looking past the ending date balance.
Yes, I agree with that, Drew, because this says estimated cash balance on December 31st, 2026. It's already assuming that your budget and expenses, which is how you got to your estimated ending cash balance, includes all estimated projects to be completed during the year. The CIP revenue tab. So this is any revenues that you expect to receive that are reserved specifically for the capital improvements. So I'm assuming your local income tax, your property tax, and then your other revenues are going to be allocated to general operations, not specific to capital improvements. This is more of if you expect to get a grant or donation that's not restricted, that could help fund some of the capital projects. So I've personally been leaving this blank because most townships are using property taxes, lit, and the excise, CBIT, and FIT to fund general operations, not specific capital improvements.
And there's a good DLGF presentation on the whole form that if you haven't seen it, watch it because they give it. I'm with Abbie on this. Like, at best, you might be able to get your 2026 estimates for your property tax, your lit, and your miscellaneous revenues. 2027, 28, there's a lot of stuff going on in legislation that we don't know what that's going to look like. Obviously, the lit councils are ending in 2027, 2028. You'll have to go to the county council for your lit. We don't know anything like that. So they're saying use this to designate it like you're going to use $10,000 towards your CIP. I would probably stay away from it. I don't really understand. I don't like this tab or why it's necessary. But they put it in here and you can leave portions of that blank. And I think you'd still pass.
Okay, I'm going to switch topics just a little bit because I talked to Ryan the other day and this tab reminded me. 2026 going forward, your CVET and FIT, so your financial institution tax and your commercial vehicle excise tax. For years, those have followed your property tax allocations. 2026 and beyond, it will no longer follow property tax allocations unless you want it to. That being said, you can deposit all of it into a single fund if you want to, any fund of your choice. It defaults in the budget screens to general fund. And then one other thing on your Form 3, there's a section called Edit Special Notes. It is required this year. There's no ramifications if you don't follow it. You need to advertise your township assistant's phone number on your Form 3 advertisement for your budget. And it can be a simple line as, for township assistance questions, please call this phone number. If your township general fund does not have a levy on it and the funds there are totally used to function, how can they still take 30%? They can take 30% of the funds that are unrestricted. So if you've obligated your funds, even without a levy, for either your 2026 budget or capital projects, there's nothing left for them to take. But because general fund can be spent on anything and is technically unrestricted, regardless of how it's funded, whether it be through local income tax or property tax, it's still subject to the transfer. It's the same with the rainy day fund. It's generally not funded with property taxes. It's funded by your transfers because you've saved money and been fiscally responsible, but it's still subject to the transfer.
It won't calculate. I mean, whatever's so say that's why I say using your Form 4B is good. So like my initial thought was to not take a tax levy on general fund and try to spend down. I wasn't going to spend down all my cash balance, but just hypothetically say I have 100,000 in my general fund and my budget's 100,000 for next year. Then on my thing, I'd put my estimated ending cash balance for December 31st, 2026 as 0. Whatever you put from your estimate, that's why using that figure correctly is going to make the biggest difference. And I think if you use your Form B, you're using something that you're estimating through your budget process, that's going to be where they're going to get their estimate from. So if you're going to use all, no levy in the general fund, and you're going to use whatever your cash balance is for your budget, then it won't have anything for its calculation. If you don't have any money so let's just say you don't need to put a CIP in for your general fund if you have no money to designate this. Putting the expenses there is to protect that money. So if you don't put it in the CIP expense section and you were at $100,000 at your ending balance, then all of that 30% of that $100,000 is going to be eligible for the roads fund transfer. So if you have zero, you don't need to go in there and start putting stuff. If your estimated balance at the end of 26 is zero, there would be no reason for you to go in here and put information in for the general fund. That makes sense. You could have one where it looks like zero. Somebody is out there is going to have one where it's zeros because they don't have a rainy day, or they're going to budget for their rainy day next year and their expense at the end of 26 is going to be zero. There's no reason to go in here and start putting figures in the CIP if you're not going to have an unrestricted cash balance at the end of that year left. So budget, CIP, whatever's left after that, 30% can go to the roads fund each year. And it'll change, obviously, as this, like Abbie said, this is going to be a working thing. It's not going to be a one time and done. They're going to try to go back every year, and you're going to do this again. And your ending cash balance will move to 27, and you'll do the same thing from there. So if you don't have any cash balance at the end of 26 for that specific fund, there is no reason for you to go in here and fill out the CIP expense form.
Well, other than it's required. You got to put something.
If you have no money, you don't have to put estimated expense. You have to go through you have to adopt your CIP
Yes, you still
plan.
have to have it adopted, but
yes.
Bill, yes, I hate this form. It is a pain in the butt to print. I'm going to show you a trick I have. This is wrap text. Move your columns over as far as you possibly can. Make them bigger so they rotate. Select all the ones in the 100 that you don't use. Right click, hide. Do we need to do an MOU if we won't have cash balance? No, you only have to have an MOU if you are planning to transfer money. And if you have that, you also have to have a resolution. But it's only if you are going to transfer money to another entity for road and infrastructure. Amy, yes, if you have enough capital projects here, like we do in this particular example, your cash balance, we have enough 27 and beyond capital projects to cover that balance. This becomes a negative, and there is a $0 calculated transfer. If you don't have any capital projects, like Drew was saying, just put none, put NA, and then just have your board sign a resolution that basically says there is none. It'll still be the standard resolution, but this will be empty.
And if you don't put any CIP and you still have cash balance, then you're basically saying, I don't have a plan for this money. 30% is going to, then that 30% will come off of that. So the CIP is just for you to make the list of things that you need done. If you don't, and you're okay with 30% going to the roads fund, then use this still the same way. It'll just tell you how much will be eligible for that.
I've told people, pretend like you were a child with no concept of money and you were asked to create a Christmas list. Anything and everything you could think of to improve your township, regardless of how much it'll cost and if you have the money for it. Put it on here. I do not believe, Larry, that you could plan for a natural disaster.
No, because it's not a defined capital improvement. It has to be in the language of the CIP, and Jonathan and Tanner were telling me somewhere in 36-6-10, it talks about, or no, 36-6-9-2, it talks about capital improvements and what qualifies. So I don't have the code in front of me, but it's got to be things that are either improvements, repairs, purchasing of land, equipment and machinery. It's got to be those kind of things. I've had people ask about could we save money for, if we had an increase in assistance. It can't be a service. It's got to be something that's a capital asset, which is physical typically, or an
Yes.
improvement to an existing structure.
Yes, fire fund is restricted and it is not eligible for the 30% transfer. That's why these tabs right here only say unrestricted. But if you have a fire fund, you still have to have a capital plan for your fire fund. That's the very confusing part about this. You have to think of the CIP separate from the transfer, but yet it's very similar. So you have to have a CIP for all of your funds except for assistance. But the only 30% will get removed from your general, rainy day, and any other unrestricted funds that you have. Christmas list. Let's think. Okay. If you have cemeteries, completely restoring your cemeteries, doing ground penetrating radar to identify all graves. You want to restore all the headstones, add memorial benches, new fences, a sign. Your township building, any improvements you need to that, add a community center, restoring anything that you have. If you have a park or you want a creative park or a little playground area on owned property that you own. What else could there be? Some people have township vehicles to help with food pantry deliveries, stuff like that. If you would like to have a vehicle to help with food pantry deliveries or home inspections or visiting people that can't come to your office, making sure all your offices are ADA compliant. Those are the ones I've been able to come up with. No, you do not need a resolution to support each item. You need a resolution for your board to adopt the entire capital improvement plan that you have as of this year. And no one will hold you to this because you can easily say, we didn't have the money, something came up, we just have to push it back.
Cody did ask, do we need to create new tabs for each of the restricted funds? I asked the same question because I was confused because I always was under the assumption if it was restricted, it wasn't on this form. They're saying if it can be used for a capital expense, they said just to take out unrestricted fund number 3 and put fire fund unrestricted. I'll have to try it because I haven't got to that point, but I wasn't under the assumption I had to add those and how that will work into their calculation. They say if you change the blue label there, override what fund name is applicable, put 1301 or
This is
11.
just for the transfer calculation. So I don't think you have to have this tab, these unrestricted tabs, for anything that's not eligible for the transfer, because that's the sole intent of this tab is to figure out what the transfer is.
I don't know. I haven't played with that yet. And I don't think
Okay.
that's where I was confused. But they did say you had to state your fire fund, your park fund, your cumulative funds.
Yeah, those are all in the expense tab.
Yeah, why, if we're not transferring it, it doesn't make a lot of sense because why am I stating it? Like somebody asked a question, if we don't have any capital improvements in our fire fund, can we put this, to pay for our fire services? Well, no, technically you're still going to have to designate it on your capital improvement plan as something that qualifies as a capital improvement. But, the only example I can get on fire and EMS is, trucks, stations, equipment, or anything else that would go into that. But that's where this part is tricky because that wasn't the understanding I originally had when they first talked about it in June.
I'll let Tyler and his bright orange shirt jump in.
I'm jump in just for a second. I think we think about the CIP and the road infrastructure fund as all being the same thing here. And I think the intent was that they're separate things that obviously there's going to be an overlap there and connect with, but we are required to get approved the CIP. Period in the story. We're required to do that, and within that requirement has to be every fund has to be addressed in that. That, like Abbie said, it can have a capital outlay, so the township assistance is not included in that. Separately, we have to transfer 30% of our unrestricted funds to the road and infrastructure fund. Now where they overlap is then where it says part of the restriction can be that CIP effectively. So we're thinking about them here as one thing, but realistically they're two separate requirements. We have to have a CIP fund for all of our funds, or CIP plan approved for all of our funds. We got, regardless if it's restricted or not, but then separately we use that in the calculation of the 30% for the road and infrastructure fund.
So Tyler and Abbie, this is what I got from Anna, because I asked her the question about the other funds that were considered restricted. She said, first, the unrestricted calculation as discussed in section 4.5 of 36-6-9. This is in the template, like Tyler's just saying, they're two separate things that'll involve the 30% calculation and only include those unrestricted funds like general rainy day. And if anything else is, they've said donations, unrestricted donations. The second part is where the fire funds or park funds would come into, and that's the CIP expense tab, the CIP revenue tab. Those are the only two places you would have to list something for the fire, park and recreation, cumulative funds, etc. You don't have to do these other blue tabs or teal tabs are only for your general rainy day and any other unrestricted fund that you may have personally. So at worst, you don't plan on buying a fire truck. You have $600,000 in cash reserves or a lot of money in it. Just start putting it on here. That way they know it's just like the last CIP. It's not really a lot of guidance of what this will do as far as for the fire and park and recreation funds, but it just lists it. And it's not going to go into a calculation of you have this much money left over. Just say you're putting $200,000 towards a fire truck or a fire station or towards playground equipment. It doesn't go from this screen to anywhere else. So it's really just you stating it and you're in compliance at that point. Yes, Cody. If you're going to plan to dedicate towards the fire, you would need to list it on the revenue section. How do you project to 27, 28? That's going to be on the own township. I mean, you could take estimates, but I don't think they expect you to know what you're going to get, especially with the state of the legislative session last year or this past spring. It is every year.
You guys are typing very, very fast.
Oh, Tyler's answering it. It confuses me when I see him.
Sorry, I'm trying to go in order.
You're good. And my
Okay.
chat's going up instead of down, so I'm not.
So is mine. I'm missing all the new ones.
I will copy everything. So if we miss anything, we can come back and try to get back to people later.
Bill, you asked if they 100% of their budget was budgeted for this next year. Basically, you're just going to have to keep doing this every year. So if somebody came from the approach that I'm just going to budget all my cash reserves and I'm not going to have anything left over when we get to this point of the year next year when we have to do the CIP again, they're not going to make you do it mid-year, but you're going to have to. It'll go back into the calculation until your next budget cycle. That's what I would think. I believe.
Yes, if you're planning to not have capital projects or not a lot of them, but just budget 100% of your cash balance every year. Someone gave me this analogy and I don't remember who it was, otherwise I'd give them credit. You know, the game where you have the three cups and there's a marble in one and you just keep moving them trying to find the marble. That's what you're gonna have to do. Rick Long, I don't have a good answer for you. Does anybody
You don't
know?
have to have, I mean, you don't have to have a separate park board. It just, the short answer, no, but I'd ask an attorney. But there's a lot of township parks that don't have park boards for them, even if it's a walking trail park. I mean, you want to have insurance on it for liability, but there's no requirement to have a park board, especially if you're only operating one park. Usually, it's helping the community get involved and or get access to grants. And obviously, this is very, we're learning stuff. Me and Abbie were talking about stuff. We were talking about the advertisement because I just talked to Tanner and Jonathan this morning, and I kind of had the question in my pocket because I heard it. The county council one, I'm asking questions all the time because I'm very confused about it. And I'm trying to make sure I know everybody wants to be in compliance. I know it's not convenient to do this. The CIP was really put in place to try to protect those general and rainy day funds. The restricted funds are restricted. It's not going to go into a 30% calculation. They just want, since they attached it to an old bill, now it's got, or an old Indiana code, now it has some old things in it that the old CIP did, but it also has the new part with the 30% and the general and rainy day and unrestricted funds. This was a push by, us at ITA. We wanted the CIP in there because they wanted 85% of our cash balances of everything. We wanted to be able to say, well, hold on, we save money. Yes, we save money more for not always just for capital improvements. Somebody talked about future expenses or a natural disaster or township assistance. Yeah, we do that too, but they're not, wanting us to say that we can hold on to that money for those reasons. I went and testified on the behalf of, I live in a industrial city where if we get layoffs from, the Stellantis or the battery plant, I want to be able to have enough cash reserves to meet the need of our community. That's not, that's not being taken into effect in our CIP by any means. These are things that are cosmetic to me or necessary, for in my instance, it's not always cosmetic for all the capital improvements, but like buildings and community centers and cemeteries and parks where, I didn't necessarily plan to spend it before this year, but now it's like, hey, do you want to spend this money on these projects or plan to spend money on these projects, or do you want this money to be restricted? Doesn't mean you'll have to give the money to the city or county. Just means it'll go into a restricted fund for that specific purpose. And then you won't be able to use them for the things you could use them for before this bill was enacted. So as we get resolutions or templates, we're not going to have a template right away for MOUs. I think it's very complicated. If you want something like the resolution for the roads fund transfer, please reach out. Abbie's email is in the chat. Copy and paste it. Just let her know your name, township, and what information you would need from her. We obviously will have somebody talking about CIPs at conference. It's not going to be at that point we're up against the wall because you're already going to be past that 10-day notification in the newspaper. Hopefully by then we have more information about the roads fund transfer that we can discuss, not so much about the procedures of the CIP.
Are we having another one of these on the same topic next
We won't
month?
we probably I'll have to talk to Debbie just because it'll be conference month. We may do like a quick update, but it won't be this in depth. It won't just be about CIP. We may have some other topics that we'll cover. It's the second Thursday of each month. Typically, when we have conference, it's kind of hard for us to not overlap stuff that we're getting ready to talk about in a few weeks. So we'll let you guys know ahead of time. I'll have to talk with Debbie on that one. We do post all these recordings on our YouTube page. I usually post it here in the chat. So if you have questions about recordings, we had a conversation back in March about that. Obviously, it's another thing that we're working through on the fly. We had a conversation about the CIP and some of the legislative stuff. So we have those here. So I will pull it up here real quick, and then I'll share it in the chat that way if you're looking for it. Here, let me see if I can find it. I'm on the wrong YouTube. Give me 1 second here and I'll get it for you guys. No, I can't see my screen. So it's not working out like I was thinking it was going to. There it is. Very quiet.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm
It's all right.
scrolling through all the chats.
Trying to find the. Don't mind my tabs. I'm a 1,000 tabs type of person. But our ITA trainings, I shared the link in our chat, but we have our township talks are here. So like the one we had last month where we kind of figured out we needed to have CIP, but it was just a brief overview. Live stream of meetings is in there as well. Our legislative briefs from last session are in there. IoT presentation, weeds and fences presentation. Basically, since 2024, we have most of our township talks on here. That way, if you want to go back and listen to a presentation, either if it's about CIP or about the changing of your domain for IoT, we have something brief for you to kind of reference from there. And then also you can find it by clicking Township Talks in the Member Center to see any past meetings. Is there any questions before we wrap this up? We usually try to cut it at an hour, but I know, and Lori, I know you're more confused now than when this began. If you got questions, please reach out to Abbie. That way, in her emails, that way we can take time to try to. It's hard to do broadcasting. Hey, this is how a CIP works. This is the formula. This is what you need to do, and somebody not walk away completely confused. So please email her your name, your township, and what exactly you're needing help with. That way they can try to get you on the right track so you can get this done in time and do it the right way. No, Chris, once the fund right now, the way the funds are built, if they go into that fund, they're restricted there. It's kind of the unfair part where we're talking about restricted funds and they're making one that we have no spending power as far as other than handing a check to the city or county, but it is a designated restricted fund for roads and roads purposes only. No.
We're only going to bill you if we create a document. If you just have questions or want to talk us through with stuff, that's why we partner with the ITA. We won't bill you for those type of things. Just if you need us to create a document or something for you. So if you, and the resolutions, don't worry about those. Those are our partnership with ITA. And because we realize the legislature has kind of screwed over townships this year. So we've created those for everybody's use. We won't bill you for those. It's just if you want us to create a projection or fill out the capital improvement plan for you, that's when we'll talk about a pricing. But just walking through stuff, answering questions and giving those two resolutions, we won't charge for those.
Jerry from Peru Township, You said Peru had a paper that is published once a week. It's published out of Marion. How do I meet the requirement for the 10 days? Uh, let us get a draft. I don't know when your budget public hearing is or your budget adoption meeting is, but obviously pick that whenever those meetings are, if you want to do them, because you can do those meetings at another township meeting. It doesn't have to have its own separate meeting. It just has to have designated time. So say you have it at your public hearing for your budget, you open your public hearing for your budget, you close it. You would then do the same procedure for your CIP, open the public hearing. If there's public comments or anything else, then you can close it. Best thing to do is find those dates, walk back 10 days, then contact your newspaper to see how fast they need it in to meet that date. So if they only do once a week, they probably have a deadline for publications. So you would need to know how soon you need to have it in there to meet the requirement to have it at that current meeting. So it may be better to do adoption meetings for a lot of people if their newspapers don't move as fast. That way you at least have 10 days. It doesn't have to be 10 days on the 10th day you're having the meeting. It has to be at least 10 days in between the publication and the meeting. Right, Abbie?
Yes.
But
10
you can't
calendar
be
days.
10 calendar days. It can be a little bit longer than 10 calendar days, but it can't be any
Yes.
before it.
So yeah, if it's once a week, go back 2 weeks.
Yeah, Kathy, the public hearing has to be held on the plan. A lot of us have asked the question, can it be held in conjunction with other meetings? And that as long as you're holding a public hearing and you open and close it, you can hold another public hearing, just like you could do with an additional appropriation. You're having a public hearing on an additional appropriation. You can do it with other township business as long as you open it for public comments, close it, and then you can even make adoption at the same meeting for the the CIP.
Yes, there is no stipulation that the adoption has to be a separate meeting from the public hearing.
Yeah.
Which is what your budget is. You have to have the public hearing and then an adoption. This one can be together like the additional appropriation.
We have to publish in paper. We are leaning towards, from what the State Board of Accounts said, is yes. What that notice looks like in the paper, that we don't know. So let me work out. One, I'm going to get the transcript from the chat so that we can get all the questions. And then what we'll do is if we have things like that where it's going to be time sensitive with publishing, we'll try to get you out a sample. Hey, this is notice to taxpayers of CIP, fill in your township, date and time, contact your local newspaper. We can't control publications in your area. It cannot be attached to your Form 3. Somebody asked that earlier. It has to be in the newspaper, separate. But let us get that. We'll try to get it back out to you as fast as you can. If you've already done your CIP, I don't know. I think if we have to follow the advertising, you might have to redo it and maybe talk to your board about, hey, we may have to open this up to the public again. But we're trying to work through it, guys. It's not been easy for anybody from the professional field, the state agencies, ITA. We're trying to figure it out all on the fly. And, me and Debbie are both trustees. We're trying to figure it out for our own townships the same way, how to plan for the future with reduced revenues projected from the state, and trying to make sure that we can spread that message to everybody that is asking for it. All right. Well, thank you, Abbie. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Like I said, her email's in the chat. If you didn't, for some reason, get her email, contact me. Mine is adurham@ita-in.org. And trust me, I know the questions are there. I'm trying to find the solutions myself. I will try to get them to you guys as fast as possible. That way we all are in compliance. We all can try to do the best with what little information we've gotten.
Barb, I do not know. I would do it how you do for any additional appropriations or anything. Anybody else have their no local papers?
Yeah,
Do
you'll
it
have to go
online?
back to the IC code of what it says that if you don't have any newspapers, if you can do it online, if it could, I don't know. That's a hard one. Debbie, are you on here?
No, she left.
Oh, is anybody on here that has that similar problem that may have to choose another avenue rather than your local newspaper? Barb, send your question into ITA or Abby or me, and we'll try to get somebody. We'll try to dig
Yeah.
into the IC code on publication, because there is stuff in there about if there's no local newspaper, you can use this instead of that. So you might be able to
Yeah.
use a public posting too. So
Yeah.
all right, thank you guys. That's for the actual notices. Like those are the paper notices you have to publish, Chris, not the newspaper. You don't have to post in 3 newspapers. But if you're going to post notice of meetings, a 48-hour notice, you can post in 3 locations. But
Yeah.
public notices are a little different. Thank you guys.
Yep. Thank you.